The power of the Roman Empire is often misunderstood, remembered through images of marching legions, stone roads, and monumental architecture, which create the impression that Rome ruled primarily through force, engineering, and visible dominance. That interpretation misses something essential. Technology did not govern the Roman world, and Rome possessed no tools that allowed fast communication, centralized surveillance, or constant control over its distant provinces. In the ancient world, distance was the greatest enemy of administration. Messages traveled slowly, information arrived incomplete, and decisions made in capitals often became irrelevant by the time they reached frontiers. By all reasonable assumptions, information delay alone should have broken Roman governance, because no state should function effectively when authority depends on orders that arrive weeks or months late. Yet Rome governed territories spanning continents for centuries, not briefly or chaotically, but with a degree of stability that allowed cities, trade, law, and daily life to continue with remarkable consistency. The explanation for that endurance lies not in conquest, but in coordination. Rome solved the problem of governing large populations under conditions of delay, uncertainty, and absence. Roman governance was designed around the assumption of constant absence. Rome did not expect governors, officials, or communities to wait for instructions before acting. Authority survived without real-time orders because it was embedded in systems that functioned independently, allowing administration to continue even when communication with the center was minimal or non-existent. Provincial cities functioned without daily oversight from Rome, managing disputes, collecting obligations, and maintaining order locally, guided by shared rules rather than continuous imperial supervision. Control depended on shared expectations. People knew what behavior was permitted, what obligations were fixed, and what consequences followed violations, reducing the need for constant intervention. Law replaced continuous supervision. Written rules allowed officials and citizens to anticipate outcomes and resolve conflicts locally without waiting for distant approval or improvising authority. This predictability reduced administrative friction. When expectations are clear, fewer disputes escalate, fewer resources are consumed enforcing compliance, and governance becomes routine rather than reactive. In such systems, compliance precedes coercion. Most people follow rules not because force is present, but because deviation is costly, uncertain, and socially disruptive. Force remained a last resort, not a daily instrument of rule, which preserved the state's resources and prevented governance from becoming dependent on constant military presence. Roman rule blended into ordinary life. Taxes, courts, and obligations became part of routine existence, rather than dramatic encounters with authority or displays of imperial power. Most provinces rarely saw legions, not because Rome was weak, but because visible force signaled that routine governance had failed and extraordinary measures were required. In Roman logic, soldiers symbolized breakdown, not success. Their presence indicated disorder, rebellion, or administrative collapse rather than normal functioning rule. Quiet governance minimized enforcement costs. Authority worked best when it felt distant, predictable, and impersonal, allowing Rome to rule vast areas without exhausting its capacity. Cheap control enabled territorial expansion. Rome could afford to govern what it conquered because its systems did not require constant attention or overwhelming force to function. Rome conquered only what it could manage. Expansion followed administrative capacity, not ambition alone, and territories were absorbed only when governance could be sustained cheaply. Administration defined imperial limits, not borders on maps. Rome expanded until the cost of governing new regions threatened to exceed the stability those regions could provide. Durability depended on routine rather than brilliance. Rome did not rely on exceptional rulers or constant innovation, but on systems that worked even when leadership was mediocre. However, systems built for stability resist rapid adaptation. Rome's strength lay in predictability, but predictability becomes a liability when conditions change faster than routines. Roman institutions discouraged improvisation. Officials were trained to follow procedure, not invent solutions, which preserved order in normal times but slowed response during crisis. Over time, strength hardened into rigidity. The very structures that reduced uncertainty made adjustment difficult when demographic, economic, or military pressures intensified. Crises punished inflexible governance. Sudden shocks exposed systems designed for steady conditions rather than prolonged disruption or accelerating instability. Demographic shocks strained expectations. Population decline disrupted tax bases, labor availability, and military recruitment, undermining assumptions embedded in administrative routines. Economic stress weakened routine obedience, as obligations became harder to meet and compliance no longer felt affordable, predictable, or beneficial for local populations. Frontiers transformed into cost centers. Borders that once functioned quietly now demanded constant attention, resources, and military presence to maintain order. Governing became progressively expensive. Each problem required more force, more oversight, and more intervention than before, eroding the efficiency that once sustained Roman power. If you want to understand how institutions quietly govern societies across history, subscribing keeps you inside these long-form explorations of power, order, and hidden systems. Authority slowly shifted from systems to individuals. When institutions weakened, personal discretion replaced procedure, increasing inconsistency and local instability. Governors gained discretion over rules. Decisions depended more on personalities than on predictable frameworks, undermining trust in uniform authority across the empire. Armies substituted for legitimacy. Military force filled gaps left by eroding institutions, transforming governance from routine administration into constant enforcement. Force replaced expectation as the default. Obedience increasingly relied on fear rather than predictability, making rule louder, costlier, and more fragile over time. Rome exhausted itself administratively, not through decisive defeat, but through the cumulative strain of governing without the institutional efficiency that once minimized effort. Rome ruled by needing less action, and it failed when maintaining order required constant intervention, reminding us that power lasts longest when it acts quietly, rarely, and predictably. History and society examines how civilization actually works beneath appearances. If this way of thinking resonates, subscribe and continue exploring the systems shaping human order.